Anybody else who knows how to do it?
Rabbi Shapiro himself wants.
Okay, let's start.
If he's not here, then doesn't matter. You can take it home and do it from your house. You can come, you can do it from your house.
It's on already, yeah?
It's on vlog, yeah. Of Beis,
Chav Beis Amid Beis the Mishnah. Okay.
Afu Amar.
The last Mishnah, we had three things. Rabbi Gamliel was more machmir, and he passed it like Bisham. So the Hemshech Hozeh says the Mishnah, Afhu Amar Shloisha Dvarim. He also, this Rabbi Gamliel, said three things, Lahakel. It was more makel, lenient. Before we had machmir, here we're going to have a list of three things that is more lenient.
Is it like Beis Hillel or not?
Oh, Malzen.
Okay.
You see? Doesn't say Basil here. Like last Mishnah said it's Sham Basil.
Right.
It will be Bryces also. What are these three dinim? Sagt the Mishnah, Mechabdin Beis HaMitos. You're allowed to sweep the Beis HaMitos. Mitos is the beds, really the chairs that they would recline when they ate. They ate on beds.
The dining room.
And the dining room, and there were crumbs between the beds, between the chairs. And you should not sweep on Shabbos and Yom Tif, especially those times when the floor wasn't the way we have it today, because it was earth. So there's going to be an isur of mashve gumois. You're going to smooth out holes. And when someone smooths out a hole, takes some earth and puts it in, fills up a hole with it, depending where you're doing it. You're doing it indoors, it's going to be boina, shus of boina. Outdoors will become more connected to chayrish as area, but now we're speaking indoors. So it's going to be a shus, a tulde, not a shus, a tulde of boina, to be mashve gumois, to smooth out holes. Okay, so therefore, but he would allow it. First, but Rashi said it's very small. It's not the whole room. It's just a little bit of crumbs. So you don't have over there the chances of. And B'chalal, they cleaned it a lot. They used to sweep it a lot. So therefore, there's less chance that you can have holes there that have to be repaired. And therefore, he allowed it.
Is there a shear on the whole size?
How much is mashve gumes? There is. Like everything in Shabbos is shiurim, but it's in the Hilchos Shabbos, it's in the Sechta Shabbos. Yeah. So he would allow a person to be mechabed a sweep the house, the
Yom Tif or Shabbos?
Yom Tif. Manichim, it says Sum Yom. Manichim es hamugmar b'Yom Tif. These two dinim of Yom Tif. What's manichim es hamugmar? Mugmar. The fragrant, the smell, and they would put incense. They'll take lavoina, they'll put it inside some coals. It will let out ashon, a smell, nice smell, an odor. We're going to see in the Gemara and the Hemshech there could be three possibilities: either to put clothing, either for the person to inhale a healthy smell. There was more mufunakim, or if there's a bad odor in the house, you want to take it away, so you would put on this mugmar to make a air refreshener, or you're putting on top of clothing to make them get smell, or you put peiros to get a good smell to it. Also, more wealthier person, people used to like to eat fruits in this way, and then it's kalim. So kalim, fruits, or the whole, the people should have a hanor from it. We'll see soon what we're talking about. Upon him, he would allow one to do this on Yom Tif. Of course, Shabbos you can't. You have to make a bracha. Psalmim depends what kind of. Atzib psalm. The third thing is oising gedi mekulas beleilei psachim. He would make a gedi mekulas beleilei psachim. Gedi is a goat. Mekulas is from the lashon of armed. Lush is armed. Now we know when you used to roast the korban Pesach, it has to be karov al kirbei, on the same stick you're putting on the meat. You have to also put the machlekes, does it go on the stick itself or on the sides of the animal? So when the gedi is over there on top of the roasting, it looks like a person that has on him armor. He has weapons on him. That's mekulos. It's lush mekulos. See Rashi soon. So normally we know we don't roast meat. Even today we even don't do chicken. Allah about this now. A few sifrim about what we should and should not do the night of Pesach, because it looks like you are being makriv kotshim b'chutz. But he would do it on the night of Pesach. And the three things. The
Welt Minute, which follows Arizal.
Yeah.
The Arizal holds you're supposed to have a piece of roasted meat.
roasted meat, but taka to eat it.
Yeah,
Because we have on this kind of we have a piece of chicken.
I know, but we don't eat
Eat
it.
it,
We don't eat it, but Sfardim
Sure,
eat
you
it.
do.
That's
Yeah.
dafka. Okay.
Huh?
Okay, no,
Sfardim dafka eat it.
Yeah, but that's not what it's
oh, that's good. No, this
Yeah, because
the
they follow
Sifur
the
Shulchan
rules.
Aruch.
Right there.
Oh, the Sifur Shulchan Aruch. There's a few sifim. Maybe next time we should talk. I didn't look at it beforehand. There it tells us what one should even today have in the bottles, even right. Kosher al Pesach. You saw sometimes, not to say kosher le Pesach. So there's in those two simonim. One about naming something, saying this is le Pesach, even though it's a bottle of milk. Le Pesach could only be a goat or a lamb. Still, there's certain hidurim of not mamish saying something is for Pesach, even any stam food, and therefore chicken can't go to mizbeach at all. Wow, I should be had that chicken shouldn't be roasted. But there's in these two simonim, it's a small sugya. It's both simonim together have this sugya. Maybe the Taka mentioned the minhagim of other people that he's always cooked. I
I'm
didn't.
telling you, the other people.
They also have them.
There's
Okay.
50% of Jews.
Say the no, I'm not chasham.
There's the other people.
No, I'm saying maybe he mentions even what the other minhagim are, not the ours. Sure, he mentions many times others. I didn't look at it today. I didn't see it. I have to look at it again. Yeah, take a look later. Al Kapanim. So these are three dinim that he was making, and the Chamor Eisim. Rashi, Mechabdin Beis Hamitois. So he says, Beis Hamesibe Sha'oichlin Shom, a house of Mesibe, right? A feast, a dining room. They would eat there. Shahayu Mesubim Va'oichl Gabi Hamitois. They would sit and recline on beds. Mugmar levoina al gabe gecholim, frankincense on top of coals. Maybe it means all types of, but they mentioned what they would do then, frankincense on coals. What's mukulas? Karav ubnei meyav tluyim chutza loy betzidoi. The karav, the legs, and the inside, the intestines, and the inner parts of the animal, tluyim are hanging chutza loy outside of this geshochtene animal after it's on the spit before it's being roasted on its side. When there would be tzoleya, the animal for the korban pesach, or in this case not for korban pesach. This was just doing it for the meat pesach night. Why did he do it? He would do it zeich mikdash as a zeich to the mikdash. Why is it zeich to the mikdash? Because the pasuk says, "Boy, you continue korban pesach." Al karav al kirbe. It has to be roasted all together. The karav, the legs, and also the kirbe, the insides of the animal, all together. So therefore, he would do it the same way. What's the lashon kulos? He says it's not a lashon kedusha, the word. Kulos is lashon giber mezuyon, a mighty warrior, mighty person, a giber that is mezuyon, that has his weapons on him, he's armed. Shekli zainoi, that his weapons teluyin loy betzidoi are hanging on his side. Like we see Targaminon, Benegay to I think it's Shmuel, so it's going to be Goliath, yeah? The koiva nechoishes, the pasuk says he had a koiva, a hat of nechoishes, of copper. It says the kulsa de nichosha. That's the Targum Unkelis. So you see the word kulsa is armored, something armored. Koiveya means hat. The hat means it's not on the side, it's on the front. If you look into Masechta Pesachim, machlokes of exactly how they would roast it. Would they put on the stick itself the insides and the krav, or on the side? Well, this is why it's called mukulos. Chachamim oisrim. Why would the Chacham answer these three dinim? Rashi will tell us why. Bishloshton, all these three. Bekibud, why should you not be mechabed the bayis, sweep the house? Mishum ashvoi gumois. You're going to smooth and straighten out holes, which is not allowed. Doesn't say here with tlabayne. The mugmar mishum, the lav tzoyrich kol nefeshu. We had it last year. It has to be tzoyrich kol nefesh. These are only very special, besser mention, right? The higher class do it. It's not tzoyrich kol adam. It's not called tzoyrich nefesh, and you can't do it. So vibal this mugmar is not tzoyrich kol nefeshu. For this reason that something is not tzoyrich kol nefesh, asrim on lei b'ksubes. In Sechta Ksubes, it says it's asur the Perikrish in the first part of Zayin. It says Asher yoichal l'chol nefesh, davar hashave l'chol nefesh, v'zeh eini elo l'mefunakim, only for those mefunakim. How would you translate mefunakim? Delicate people. Delicate people. Oh, l'mi sherei cheira, he has a bad odor coming from him. He needs to have his house should always be perforated, should have perfume, and should have a smell to it. But that's not the regular person. We mentioned last time Ksubis also about the Be'ila. We said then, is it Tzorich Kol Adam, Mashek, and other things are not. And we had the different union we mentioned it last year. The third thing, Ubigdi mekulas, this goat that was mekulas. What's wrong? Why should you not make something zeichel and mikdash and roast the goat and eat it? It looks like kodshim. The people are going to say mutter lahakdish. It's allowed to be makdish an animal for kodshim. Vilechel, and you could also eat where kodshim bachutz, kodshim outside the Beis Hamikdash. Now this was Rabbi Gamliel, and the Mefarshim discussed it. Speaking here, Taka, about it's after Churban Habayis, so it wasn't, and even Rizman Habayis outside Beis Hamikdash you can't do it, and he would not do this Korban Pesach. It wouldn't be a chiddush. No one would say it's not allowed for keret. If it's Korban Pesach, you have to do it this way. It's also because it was done outside Beis Hamikdash or even after this man, the Beis Hamikdash. So now we know the three dinim. Why we say that it's not allowed, because of these three above mentioned. Talk to Gemara starting with the din of the second din. We're not going to discuss here Mechad and Sabayis. It's, of course, it can be very relevant to Hilchos Shabbos, about sweeping the house, Masha Gumas. He's not discussing the sugi here. It's mentioned here, but it doesn't discuss the sugi here. The Gemara starts right away with the second din. Okay.
That's the reason.
I don't know. It doesn't say. Anytime it mentions and passing a certain Mishnayos, but the main thing is not for this. Maybe in Hilchos Shabbos, in the Masechta Shabbos, I presume. I don't have to give a look. There it's b'mayrichis about the protim, about this Hashvas Gumais, why is it called, and what Malach, I don't say what Malach it's from. I know it's from Baina, because it's Bewusst Zach. Indoors it's from Baina, outside I think it's Chayrish. But it doesn't mention, it goes straight to the second din. Rab Asi says, Machlaikis legameir, to do mugmar, avol lahariach divrei hakol mutar. So he says over here, this is the Havman of the Gemara, that he has a pshat like this. He says this is called, when you megame, means you're making something else smell. However, if you want to put smell to the room, that everyone should be able to have hanoah, like smoking today, right now, taking in the odor, some kind of a smell. That he says, kul alma, everyone says you're allowed to. That's the Havman from the Gemara now.
In other words, the smell it is also on the incense sense. And you're going to burn the incense.
Yeah, so you're burning the incense. So we learned Shat the Mishnah where Rashi learned it, and that's talking to be the Maskon of the Gemara. The problem is not all people need this thing. Yeah, that's what we say here, right? That's what Rashi said. It's not l'chol nefesh. So we'll see if it's going to fit with what we're saying here. So this is all the Gemara. Abel lahariach, but lahariach. Look into Rashi, the first Rashi of the Gemara. Machlekes legameir. What kind of gimor? Shekasha asur chachamim. When the chachamim said it's asur, le'asur ella keshemanichai kedei legamer boy kelim. Only when you're using this to be megamer kelim, to make a smell into kelim. Shenoisem, what would you do? Noisem b'machta.
Kalim clothing or kalim?
Kalim clothing. We had it last time. Kalim's called everything. But what other kalim would they make smell? I don't know. Yeah, right. Well, maybe. But kalim shenoisem b'machta, you would put into the machta, into the pot, right, or the pan. You would put the levoina. Im halevoina v'hagacheles. And you would put this, where would you put this pat with the chelis and levoina? Here's begodim. Tachas abgodim, under the clothing, it called before kalim. Lahachnis bahein, to be able to bring it to the kalim, to the begodim, reyach, a nice smell, right? Mm-hmm. So why? So this is kus machlekes is about legamir, to do it to other things. The lav lahanos hagufu. This activity of making your clothes smell, and even today, putting on cologne, you have to make sure you put it on your body if you want to make, but not on the clothing, because we're not allowed to do it on the clothing itself. But this activity of making your clothing smell, it's not some anos haguf. If you're taking in the odor, if you're putting it into the house, everyone should smell a good smell. That's mamish like anos haguf. And we said other mishra, making a fire that the goof could benefit from the fire, from the warmth of the fire is allowed, even though you're not eating it. Here also, a nice smell, the whole goof has a noah from it. However, this making the kalim, the godim should smell good, he says, if it's the lav hanos hagufu, elo lahachshir kalim, it's called hachsharas kalim. You're preparing the kalim because apparently those people that always make their clothes smell, so until it smells, they don't have yet a keli. So basically, they're doing not makeh patish, but something similar to that. They're machshir, they're kalim, they're preparing their clothing to be worn. The same way by us, if you don't have a sleeve on your shirt, and you sew on that you put on that last sleeve, you're machshir your shirt to be able to be worn. So for those people, by putting the smell into the reich, into the begadim, they're machshir, they prepare the kelim, the clothing, to be able to be worn.
Okay.
And that's not allowed. Avol, what could you do? Avmaniach levoin al gabi gecholim. You're allowed to put levoin on gecholim, lahariach reyach, to be able to have a good smell.
Okay.
That is mutter. Shanos hagufu. It's hanov of the goof. My body is benefiting from the smell, and it's yomtiv. Uloichel nefesh domi. It's simut oichel nefesh. Oichel nefesh, you said, doesn't just mean mamish eating itself. Anything, the whole goof has hanor. And when you smell something, the whole goof gets refreshed. You like it. The hashto lemay dekam Rab Asi. According to this understanding, what Abasi says, Lehavik time the Rabbanon Mishum Dovar Hashav L'chol Nefesh Kedeprishus Leil. Rashi says, I in the Mishnah told you the reason the Rabbanon say it's also was not Shav L'chol Nefesh. But according to the way Abasi is learning here, it's not at all to do with that. It's because it's not Hanoas Haguf. It's Machshir Hachsharas Kelim. Rashi is very important, right? Ella mishum the likshet kelim is hachshit. To repair the kelim who mekavin. He wants to be machshit his kelim. Ulukamon hodar boy machmas kushya. Later on, right now, we're going to go back and retract on this interpretation of the Mishnah because of a specific question. So when Rashi told us the Mishnah and told us the reason why Chama said it's asur, and Rashi said because it's not soyrich kol nefesh, not everyone needs to have this. That's going to be the maskon of the Gemara. That's going to be the maskon of the Gemara. And that's what they say it's also. According to that, that's now according to Rabbi Asi, we're learning differently. Rabbi Asi says that the machlekes is about to make your clothing, to give it on the clothing, and laharech. Everyone agrees to the latter because I know it's a goof, and the clothing Chama says hachsharas kelim. That's going to be the problem. So now the Gemara is going to ask a question, this interpretation, that we're going to see befeidish that that's not the reason of the Chachamim, the Chasharas Kelim. Not just that, we'll see befeidish that's not the case. He said the Machlokes is about your Kelim, your Begadim. Everyone agrees with the odor. We'll see if an upcoming mission, no, that's not the case. We'll see some Eisvei. Ein Mechabdin Beis Hamitois. So this is a Braise. The Braise will be very different than our mission a little bit. So and that difference will clarify the difference in the Mishnah, but that's not the point we're trying to bring out here. Our point is about what is the argument about and what is the no argument about. But we're still going to learn the whole Braise. Okay. So we shouldn't forget that's the focus now. We want to bring the whole Braise in just to bring out what are the Chacham and Gamliel arguing about and what they're not arguing about. In the meantime, let's have the whole Braise. You should not sweep out the Beis Hamikdash beyond Tiv. V'shel Beis Rabban Gamliel in the house of Rabban Gamliel mechabed, and they'll be mechabed the Beis Hamikdash on Yom Tiv. Okay, up to now, what's in the Mishnah. Rabbi Elazar bar Tzaddik, he says, many times nichnasti achar abo lebeis Rabban Gamliel. I went after my father Tzaddik to the house of Rabban Gamliel many times. V'lo yehoyu mechabdin Beis Hamikdash b'Yom Tiv. And I clearly saw that they would not sweep between the beds on Yom Tiv, different than the Kamem. Rather, what would they do? They would be very careful, make sure not to sweep. There would be crumbs. They would have another solution. Ella mechabdin oisoy ahead of Yom Tiv. Ahead of Yom Tiv, they would sweep out whatever's there before Yom Tiv. Upoirisin aleim sadinim. They would spread out sheets over the floor, over the couch. And the next day tomorrow, when the guests come and then they leave, and there's crumbs there. Where the crumbs fell onto the sheets. Then the then they would take away the sheets. So all the crumbs would be taken away that way, but they would not go and sweep. And the house becomes clean and swept by itself. That's number one. So right, so the Pasha says it's not what happened. Rabbi Gamliel also did not sweep. What? That's what he said. Amrullah. So the Chama said, "In Cain, if that's what they did, and that's what there's a discussion here about, and it seems like the Chachamim, and we know from the Chachamim are arguing with Rabbi Gamliel. What's wrong with what he did? If the way we interpret the Mishnah to mean that he actually swept, I can understand why they're arguing. Sweeping is a questionable thing to do. You mashve gumos. It was a little bit, not a lot. But if they put down sheets and they merely picked it up and after the crumbs accumulated, throw it out, he says, Af b'Shabbos mutar la'asis kain. Even Shabbos you could do this. What's wrong with doing this? So it can't be. This is what we're discussing. The next din. You also said that they would be Yom Tif, that the Tanna Kama says we're not allowed to do this mugmar on Yom Tif, put fragrance into, put lavain into the gecheles. V'shal beis Rabbi Gamliel manichin, they would do it. And again, I went after my father, the beis Rabbi Gamliel, to the house of Rabbi Gamliel. They would be feidish not place the lavaina into the coals on Yom Tif. What would they do? There would be a nice smell in the room. How would they create a nice smell in the room? Ella mevin adiskois shel barzel. Adiskois, Rashi will see in a moment, means little jars made from barzel. Uma'ashnin oisay me'erev Yom Tif, and they would make sure there's oshon. There is this smoke of the good smell inside these little jars erev Yom Tif. Upoikikin nikveyem me'erev Yom Tif. They would close up, stuff up the holes on the cover of this jar on erev Yom Tif. The next day, when the guest would come in, they would open up the holes of this jar that had in it the smoke. The house automatically has its good smell. And that's not a problem. They even said, I think the Razor, that was the Rebbe Rashav's brother. He was a chain smoker. He couldn't. So Shabbos he couldn't smoke. So they say before Shabbos he filled up bottles of smoke, and on Shabbos he opened it to take in the that's what they said.
But it's an old thing. It's an easier solution. You schmeck tobacco. It's the same exact thing as a cigarette. Okay. It's full of nicotine.
The same thing.
Same thing.
So no one has a dafka that addiction to the cigarette itself. You could do that in place of the.
Yeah, you can do schmeck tobacco all you want.
Okay. Fine. This is what he's saying. If you did do there, Amr Lloyd told him, "In Cain, if that's all they did was only before Shabbos prepared these little jars, what's wrong? You could have done it before Yom Tov. If you do it Shabbos also, why did you have Yom Tov? In Cain after Shabbos, mutlasis came. So it doesn't seem to reason. It doesn't stand to reason. Doesn't make so that this was a discussion about putting on a sheet for the crumbs or filling up these little jars before Yom Tov, because that wouldn't be a chiddush. That could be done even on Shabbos. Elo, itmar. Oh, so this is the end of the scene. Okay, what do we see from here? This is the Braise. How is this pose a question to the Basi? So let's look at the Rashi. Rashi is explain to this Braise, and we'll see this is a question to the Basi. First, what do you see here clearly? You see clearly the discussion was about lahariach. What do we have here in this Braise? Okay, this discussion was it little jars or did Imamish put the levoina inside on Shabbos? That was a different version here of the story, right? Well, what are we talking here about? About getting a nice smell in the room, not about making your clothing. And the passage is finished saying that they're arguing about clothing, making your clothes, but about putting a smell in the room, everyone agrees. No, you see clearly the Chum don't agree. According to this Braise, they took issue with the Rebbe Tzadik's version of how they did it. But the whole conversation there, you see, it's about creating this ear refreshener and not about creating a smell on your clothing. And Abasi says the ear refreshener, everyone agrees you could. The argument with the clothing. So let's just finish up in the Gemara and then go to Rashi. So Itmar, rather, what did Rabbi Asi mean to say? Not just the opposite. Hochi Itmar. Rabbi Asi machloikis loriach. The machloikis is about this ear refreshener. Aval gamer asur, but to make clothing, everyone holds even Rabbi Gamliel. Clothing says machshi kelim. Everyone says you can't be machshi kelim on Yom Tov. Rabbi Gamliel. What did he do that they argued with? He created a perfume in the room. And even on that, like we said before, that's going to be the machlekes. Gamliel says you could do it because everyone needs it. And the Chum say, like Rashi explained, it's not say to call Adam. Most people don't have their home with ear refresheners in the house because they're not so mefunokim, they're not so rich, they don't have a bad smell in their house. So that's going to be talking. The way Rashi explained the machlekes in the Mishnah, that he says say to call Adam, and it's not say to call Adam, that's going to be the maskana here. Okay. So two ways of Asi. First, of Asi learned the machlekes is about is it hechsher kelim or not. And when it comes to having odor in the room, everyone agrees you could. Now, no, we're going to have the opposite. The Rabbi said that when it comes to the clothing, everyone says you can't. Why? Because the argument is about creating a smell in the room. What they're arguing about? They're arguing about tzorich kol adam, not tzorich kol adam. Let's look at the Rashi. From the beginning of the Gemara, machlekes legamer. We do this Rashi already. You did Rashi. Next Rashi. They were the ones invited, called to come to the Rabbi Gamliel was a Nasi. So when they called the Choshve guests came for Yom Tif, then the Chovid Yom Tif covered what he would do. So there's a word over here, Ardaskiois. He puts a French word. What is it? These are small jugs. Here, Nuvuvim. Nuvuvim means empty, hollow. Umanukavim. And they're whole, they have holes inside of them. Poikikim nikveyim. Poikik means to stuff, not give it a hole. What? Lishmeir ha'osham, to preserve the smoke. V'hareyach, and the reach and the smell. Shlo yetz, shouldn't go out. So they would stuff it before Yom Tif. And then on Yom Tif, they would open up the holes. In that case, if that's the whole story, the Chum told Shimon Tzadi, Lahayu chaveirav chlukin Allah. Why should they argue with him? Gav b'Shabbos. Mutalasas came. Even Shabbos one could do this. Elevada, rather be what's the story is really beyond the manichim. The mamish place it inside. The mamish create the fire, put the levoina on top of the coal, which is lechoina. We'll see later. What is the problem? You mamish extinguishing a fire. When the levoina falls into the coals, a little bit of the sparks go out. So you're doing kivui, and also you're lighting a fire on the levain itself. You're doing two things here. You're extinguishing a little bit of the coals when you're throwing it on top of the coals, and the spices are being now catching fire. It's the machabit, the malach of lighting a fire. Nevertheless, he said you're allowed to do it because it holds tzedek nefesh. So he says, what do we see from this whole brayse? Gamrinan mineh, we learn from this brayse the lav legamer have. It wasn't to be able to make clothing. The argument wasn't about putting the odor on clothing. Rather, to give a smell, for respect, to honor the guest. And on that, the Rabbanan argued on that point. To not allow this to do it on Yom Tov, according to Tanakama. Rabbi ben Tzaddik, I feel like Gamliel lo hitir. Gamliel didn't say it's allowed. Even according to Rabbi ben Tzaddik's version of the story, we don't speak about the case of lighting. The only thing he did was he opened up those little jugs before on Yom Tov itself. But putting it into the fire itself is for sure not allowed. And here we're saying, Yuram says that Kula Alma, everyone agrees you could do it for the room. Just the opposite. Everyone agrees you can do it for the room. You can't for the clothing. Everyone agrees. So the opposite. Rabbi says the opposite is going to be. So the machlekes says legamer kulam made you can do it for the clothing, and even for the room. There's a machlekes if it could or can't. That's going to be the maskon. So machlekes l'riach. Yeah, machlekes l'riach. That's hasam hu d'shar Rabbi Gamliel l'niach. Over there, Rabbi Gamliel allowed you b'yamtiv k'dei l'hariach. Tanakama the Rabbi ben Tzaddik, as the Tanakama of Rabbi ben Tzaddik's Braise, but Rabbanan Asri, Rabbanan said it's also the Be'ilin Davar Shalom Chanefesh, as it has explained already in the Mishnah. The Svaras Machlekes, the Rashi explained in the Mishnah already. The Svaras Machlekes between Rabbi Gamliel and the Chachamim is about Shovel Chol Nefesh Ba'inon or not. Zok the Gemara weiter, back to our Gemara. Itmar, Zok the Gemara. Question. What's going to be the din la'ashen? The Rashi says, what does it mean la'ashen? La'ashen means to create oshon, smoke, but to do what? Ashen peiros. Ba'ashan l'psamim likleit tam habesim. That the peiros should get the tam of the psamim. All you have to do that on Yom Tif. So we spoke here before about to do clothing. Everyone says you should not do. The house itself, everyone holds. And not everyone holds. Rabbi Gamliel holds it's allowed. Chametz it's not tzorich kol adam. What's about fruits? Basically, is it tzorich kol adam or not? Does everyone like to have fruits that way? And just that they're poor, some people, so they can't afford it, or it's not even something that everyone is shavu kol adam. By the odor in the house, It's takanat for cholodam. Some people don't need it, don't want it. I don't want it. If the house smells good and they're not mefunik, they don't want to have extra smells in the house. Why should they have some chemicals now, other extra things? But so therefore, I can understand it's not tzorich cholodam. But fruits, what do you say? It's not accessible to everyone because they're not rich enough to buy the psamim? Okay, but if everyone would enjoy the fruits, then you could say it's tzorich cholodam. Like you had the Gemara Beitza you mentioned, a tzvi, to go capture a deer and eat the deer meat on Yom Tif. Mother says maybe you're not allowed to eat the deer meat on Yom Tif. Why? Because who eats deer meat? Only very wealthy people who can afford to catch a deer and slaughter the deer. So maybe it's not called tzorich cholodam. The mother says no. Everyone would like to eat deer meat. He happened not to have enough money for it. Doesn't mean that inside the definition of tzorich cholodam doesn't mean if everyone has availability or accessibility to this thing. It means does everyone need it? Most people don't even need it. So also the shaila is the perfume in the room. Most people don't need it even. So therefore, it's not called tzorich cholodam. The question is about fruits. Most people don't have this in the fruits, but if everyone likes it and would eat it, it's called tzorich cholodam. Let's see the Gemara. Maula Ashen. Rav says you're not allowed to do Ishur on Peiris. Shmuel Amar Muti, you're allowed to do Ishur on Peiris. I see the halach. I see a little ice over here. The halach is talking like Shmuel, you're allowed to. What is a machlekes? Amar Osur. Why? You are first of all. That's a regular. You're extinguishing. That's the same applicable to before as well. Whenever you're taking levoina and putting it on top of coals, the little bit of the coal is going out. So you're doing mechabe. You're doing also mavir. Mavir is also igniting. What are you igniting? You're igniting the levoina, the psamim that you're putting into the coal is getting lit. So why do you choose to say you're over on the lav, on the isur of mechabe? Are you putting the psamim into the gacheles? You're doing that right away, but later on you're also doing mavir. So it says pashit amalei tchilase mechabe v'seifim mavir. I just chose the first malacha. The first malacha you're actually doing two malachas over here. One is you're extinguishing mechabe when you place it inside, and then you're doing also mavir. Now, of course, the one that says you're allowed to do it, he says it's called tzorich nefesh. You can do it on Yom Tov. The one that says you can't do it, he says you can't do it because it's not tzorich nefesh. Well, then let's see Rashi. Why should it be asur? So he says the tefunik yiseiruhu. It's an extra mefunik, right? A person who's very delicate. It's something extra luxury. Most people don't have this luxury of eating fruit that have the smell to it. Ve'ein shav l'chol nefesh. It's not shav l'chol nefesh. Ela li'istinis. Only to an istinis, he needs to have his fruits in this way. But people today also, you have such things. You have fruits that smell to it. With this oshon that you're creating, this
is similar what they do with the fish in Canada. They smoke it, smoked fish.
Smoke is what? Also with a smell, with a smell to also.
Smoked fish, no?
Okay, but smoked salmon, but it's regular smoke, regular fire, not smell.
What I'm saying is that they do the same thing with fruits. That's all it is.
But here it gives up that smell. It doesn't smell oshon.
It also could be an Indian of bishul, by the way. If it's raw, the smoke is hot enough.
Yeah, but Yom Tov is not proud of cloud. Yom Tov is not. So Royce, he says that like Ahuda says, time of the rabbi, you're extinguishing the coals. When you're doing kibui, when you're putting the powder of the psamim on top of the coals, then you're doing a little bit of kibui right away. Later, doing more mavi, then you're lighting more. But at that moment, to do that, like when you put something on a barbecue, right, that the meat goes into the coal, the first thing is you're extinguishing the fire, but later you're giving it tzareyach also. He says it's called a nefesh. He says no. Poor people also like this, so it's considered also roy. They don't have accessibility to it, but they like it. It's not found to them. They don't have the money to do this, but they also appreciate that. It's similar, like we said before, the example of the tzvi b'yomtiv. That everyone likes it, tzvi, but most people don't eat it. That's machlekes. What is the lav? What is the isur prish mechabe? The prish, like Rashi explained before. So the one that says the malacha is going to be mechabe and mavir. So if the definition is, it is tzedek kol adam. You could do it, no problem. Do all the malachas if you need to tzedek echel nefesh. Now the one that says it's not called tzedek kol adam, therefore you can't do any malach, and therefore you should not do it. V'nei meyasim ma'am b'pnei shemav, you're lighting a fire. Psamim, you also light psamim. Shegam zeh malacha. It's also malacha. You answer him, amalei tchilasim lechaber sefer mavir. The teravai you have, you're right. You have both. I mentioned this for some malacha that you're doing when you're doing this activity. But no, I mentioned the first malacha that you're doing. Dr. Gemara Beitza. Dr. Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, al gabi gacheles asur, al gabi cheres mutor. So this that we said, let's say for the fruit, Shmuel says, Rav says it's asur. So Rabbi Yehuda says, al gabi gacheles is asur. The iker mechabu mavir, right? So according to Shmuel, the malacha is mechabe and mavir. According to Rav, it's both of them. That's the malacha. He says you're allowed to do it on Yom Tov. But everyone says what is taking place here? Taking place is mechabe and mavir. The question is technically, is mechabe and avir taking place also in this upcoming case of a cheres? You have a piece of cheres, very hot cheres. You put samim levoyin on top of the cheres.
Says that for cheres, not matachet. Matachet gets red, and that would be also
ken sein. So the word shayla here is, first of all things, what happens? Do you say that a little piece of the cheres that's hot, by you putting the psalm on top of it, you're making it should not be so hot? Is that cold? You're extinguishing that little piece. There's no fire there. It's just a piece of cheres. Or do you say lepoil, that psalmim is now being lit and it's being mavid. It has a fire, even though there was no fire whatsoever. It's just the heat of a cheres. That's a shayla here. So Zokter Rabbi Yehuda al gabi gacheles asur. We said before it's asur according to Rav. But al gabi cheres muter, he says muter. But Rabbi says al gabi cheres nami asur. Why? A new thing we're speaking here about. Mishum the kamoilid reicha. That means we'll see Rashi. It's not going to be a problem of mechab and mavir, because cheres there's no active live fire here at all. So there's nothing going out. You're making something warm or hot. It's not cold putting it out. So you make it. It's not called putting it. Nor of us anayazach. You're creating a new reich. Rabbi said, "Am tavayu sechufei kosa ashiroi v'yemitova osur." To take a cup, ashiroi is on your clothing. On shiroi is on your silk clothing, and take a cup that has a odor to it, and put your clothing in order to get the clothing should have the smell. By time mishum the kamoilu dereicha, because you're creating a new reich. It says in Shabbos that you're allowed to be meilal reich. You take this atzei psamim. You have pieces of good psamim. You're allowed to rub it to get a good smell, or cut the ends to get the smell to come out of it. Why is that? The ketve cut of madir, and also mareich you can smell hasam reichem yisa. That means the reich is already there all the time. You're not making reich here. By the cheres and the levoina, there is no reich here. Only when the levoina gets hot, you're creating a new reich, a new smell. Mashenkin by this atzip samim, they had a reich. You're igniting, you're revealing, you're megala what's behalim, but you're not.
It's also being megala
for the levoin itself. But the cheres has the levoin. Both of these two components themselves have no reich whatsoever. It's raw, like it's a raw. It has to be made. No, yes. Also, why can it also you're revealing, because the incense has in it hidden the power to give out a smell later on. Apparently, when it comes to the eitz itself, if you were to smell it, you have already a smell right away. No, but when you rub it, it gives out more. When you cut it more, the levain itself, apparently, the raw psamim, this doesn't have anything to it until you make the fire. Kenzat, I don't know. So here it says, but. Yeah, it's being born a new reich. Let's look at Rashi at the top. Al gabi cheres shehasiko, you lit it on top of cheres. You're making it light. It should be ignited. Mutter. Why? The kibui leke. You don't have kibero. You don't have a fire you're putting out. That's number one. What's about havara? Nami ayde shinui. He says it's havara de shinui. Klachayat. So he says, he says,
you're cooking.
Yeah, you're cooking the spices, right? And I came through, you're having Gemara Shabbos all about if something's very, very hot, if it's even hot from the sun or something else, you can't fry an egg on top of a hot cloth. It doesn't affect the Shabbos. there's a cloth that's boiling hot from the sun or from other. You want to cook up a scrap, make an egg on it. You're cooking on the I'm not cooking on fire itself, on a very hot substance, but still it's a problem. So Rashi says it's cooking. So you should not be allowed to do because of that. Why mention reyach? He says it's kalachiyat. This takes issue with Rashi here. This thinks it's mamish, not kalachiyat. This thinks that's holds that it's considered mamish cooking. And the reason why you can't do it for a different reason why you can't do it, the only reason is because of reyach. So Kopanim. So let's go weiter. It goes into the cheres shlehoye beirech. There was no reich. V'asor it's also the rabbanik shemelo davar chadash. Karavu lo'isa malacha chadasha. Doing something is similar to doing a new malacha. It says chufei kaso ashiroi lichbeis kois mavusam, turning over, putting on a kois that had mavusam in it. Al hashirayim shiroim shel malbush. This is the silk part of the malbush. Lahachis behem reich. Haboisem shebekois, to put on top of the lavush, the reich is like osur. Why the kamoil the reich b'shiroim? You're doing the reich. The ma'ishna meila mariach boy. Tanya says the mashilim. Mashilim is another perik of Matzniya. I think Mevi. There it says Gabi atzip sami meila. You could rub it. The bane is based between your fingers. Kadela hitzi reichei eiket oil to cut it. Sheik makim haktima, the place where you're cutting. Lach should be soft and nice and reich. And it's going to give out a reyach with lushin. Of course, we're speaking about it's already tolush. If it's chum you can't do it. So should we quick? Should we stop it now? Let's stop it now because I have to go. Okay. So next time we'll do the taste and we'll finish up with the Mishnah. Okay.
So do you think what's the thought? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for example, the subject